Today is September 4th, 2010. I'm visiting with Walt Garrison, the Oklahoma State University campus in Stillwater, Oklahoma. This interview is for the O State Stories Project, the Oklahoma World History Research Program. Walt, you're on campus for a ball game today. We appreciate you're busy. We appreciate you taking time to come by and visit.
Gill, as I've always said, everything that has ever happened to me started right here at Oklahoma State.
Well, let's back up a little bit and ask kind of about your early life, where you grew up, your family, your mom and dad. Can you share some of that information?
Well, I grew up in Lewisville, Texas, born and raised there. My dad was a fighting farmer. That was the mascot at Lewisville High School. My mom and dad were both graduates of Lewisville High School, and so I grew up right there about probably 5 blocks off Main Street, which at that time was in the country. And I went to school there, my whole first grade through graduation in the 12th grade, and played football there. And I've always said we never had a good team in Lewisville, and always said if we won the coin flip, we had a celebration, because we didn't win a lot of games when I was playing. But had a great time, great childhood, great family. Had 2 brothers and a sister, and they all played football. Well, my sister didn't play football, but my brothers both played football. And,
what position did you play in high school, Walt?
I played linebacker in high school. In fact, I came to Oklahoma State as a linebacker. Of course, you were a year or 2 behind me, so you don't know. But I played linebacker. We only played 2 games in. We played Arkansas here and OU down there, and that's the only 2 games we played. The rest of the time we were kind of dummies for the varsity. But they moved me to fullback when Coach Cutchin came in. When Phil Cutchin came from Alabama the second semester of my freshman year, and if you played linebacker on defense, you played either fullback or center on offense. So I was too little to play center, so they moved me to fullback, and I hated it. I never carried the ball in my life until then.
Interested in that. Let me ask you quickly, growing up, what did your dad do for a living?
Oh, my dad was a machinist. He worked for General Dynamics, which was consolidated to start with, then it was Convair, and then it was General Dynamics. He was a machinist, so he made parts for airplanes for about 30-something years over in Fort Worth.
Okay. Well, anything else you did other than football, any school activities or community activities you remember?
Well, in a small school like Lewisville was at that time, because there was 2,150 people in the town, so it was a small school. And if you were a boy, you played all events. You football and basketball, baseball, track. You played everything because there wasn't enough kids to go around. If everybody didn't play, you didn't have a team hardly. So, and then I was in the FFA, vocational agriculture, which thank goodness I was. I learned how to weld and how to do some other good things. But most of us, you went to a small school, so most of us enjoyed that environment.
How many kids in your senior class, do you remember?
I think there was 37, 33, something like that. We had a pretty large graduating class because before that there wasn't that many. I think my sister, who was 3 years behind me, they had the largest graduating class in Lewisville history, and I think it was like 80 or something like that. So
but your class was only 30-some?
37, I think.
Wow.
Gil. I'm not sure exactly, but.
Yeah. Well, what about? I've heard some stories about your recruiting experience at Oklahoma State, kind of how you got to OSU. Can you kind of share us about?
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the greatest things ever happened to me. I worked for the American Nut Company, which was a peanut factory in Lewisville, Texas. They made commodity peanut butter for ships afloat, overseas, PXs, and welfare. And we made gallon cans of peanuts, and I worked on Friday and Saturday nights. I worked midnight till 8 in the morning shift. Wow. And so I never really got to go to a school dance, because after the football games I'd have to go to work at the peanut company. And the guy that owned the peanut company was a guy named Zan Burris, and I worked there 3 years, I guess. And he told my dad, he said, that boy needs to go to school somewhere, you know. And Daddy, of course, we couldn't afford to go to college. He couldn't afford to send me to college. And so Zan Burroughs had a brother who was the lieutenant governor of New Mexico. And he said, well, I'll call my brother and he can get him a scholarship to New Mexico State because it's a land-grant college and the government funds it. And, you know, we get him a scholarship out there. So he called his brother, and his brother said, well, that would work, only New Mexico State's on probation. They don't have any scholarships. So his brother called the governor of Oklahoma and said, there's a kid down there in Lewisville, Texas, I want you to give a scholarship to. So Neil Armstrong, really, I mean, he never seen me play football, and but they sent him down to Lewisville to recruit me to Oklahoma State. And he didn't know if I had one leg or weighed 100 pounds or two. He didn't have no idea. And but they gave me a scholarship. And that's the reason I got there, not because I could play football, but because I could unload boxcars of peanuts.
Yeah. Well, in high school, were you all conference or did you get any honors or recognition?
My senior year, I was second team all district honorable mention, which is what, third team or fourth team, something like that, in a real small district down there. I made all district in basketball. Is the only sport that I made all district in.
That's a great story.
It's a true story. It's not a good story, but it's a true story.
Oh, Lord. Well, so Neil Armstrong coming, but did you ever make a recruiting visit to the campus?
After he came down, I went to, they had me come up and do a visit because I didn't even know where Oklahoma State was. In fact, I thought it was OU, you know. I mean, actually I did. And Mother brought me up here, and Billy Tillett from White Ride, Texas, who was a receiver, and he didn't last long up here. He wasn't here the year that I came, but and he showed me around, showed me the student union, showed me a lot of pool halls and beer joints, and I liked it. So my first introduction to Millie's, but I liked the school. When we drove in, and all I saw out there was horses and cattle and barns and fields, and I said, man, this is a great place, you know. And really, I mean, I love Oklahoma State, but it ain't close to nothing, you know. It's right out in the middle of nowhere, and that's the part I liked about it the best. And the campus, of course, I'd never been in a football stadium that big. I thought, and what Lewisville hold, 30,000, 25 something, I don't know what the heck, but it was the biggest stadium I'd ever been in. So I was sold on Oklahoma State from the first visit.
That's great. Well, what kind of following from your comments? When you got on campus, what were your first impressions of the campus itself?
I didn't have a clue where I was, and they put me in a room, and my roommate, the guy, and I don't even know what his name was because he never showed. So I was rooming by myself, and I didn't know a soul. I mean, Neil Armstrong's the only guy that I knew, you know, and then I ran into Rusty Martin and found out that, you know, he rode horses and stuff. So we kind of formed a friendship that's lasted 40-something years now. And he was rooming with the guy, and they didn't get along real well. So Rusty moved in with me because I had an extra bed. So I'd never been on a campus, a college campus in my life. I didn't know where anything was. And it took me like 3 days to find out where my classes were. You know, I'd have to ask somebody, okay, where's the animal husbandry building? You know, where's this, where's that? And but it was an experience.
What was your major?
Veterinary medicine.
Pre-vet?
Yeah, pre-vet. You had to go with either arts and science or animal husbandry. And of course, I went with animal husbandry.
All right. So you really enrolled with the intent of being a veterinarian? Was that your intention?
Oh yeah, that was my intention, was to be a vet, and I never made it.
That's good. So you're talking about your linebacker experience. What position is that? The position you're expecting to play when you got?
That's what I did play. I started at linebacker in those 2 games. You know, even when and we did beat OU that year. We killed them. We beat them. I don't know what is. I know our senior year we beat them 16-17 with the varsity.
Good.
Yeah, but we beat OU down in Norman, and the freshmen. Of course, it wasn't varsity; it's freshmen, and I played linebacker.
Well, who was
and our head coach? Our head coach as freshman was Sammy Ball, Slinging Sammy Ball. He was a friend of Neil Armstrong's, and he was between jobs with the New York Titans and the Houston Oilers. So Neil talked him into coming coaching the freshmen. And what a great experience. What a great experience to play for him.
Now, and for those who might not understand it, in that era, freshmen weren't eligible to play on the varsity.
Right.
So the freshmen had a separate team.
Right.
And now, and back, what do you remember about Neil? You've talked to Neil. Neil's come down and recruited you. He was pretty special at OSU too, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, great guy, great guy. I mean, he made you feel comfortable, and he always told me, he said, Walt, now if you need anything, you call me. If you need information, if you need whatever, call me. And Neil, of course, coached for the varsity, so we didn't have a lot of interaction once I got here, but he was a great man. I mean, I thought the world of Neil.
And then he worked in the Dallas Cowboys organization.
Right, he worked in the Dallas Cowboys, so I got to reunite with him down there. And in fact, the last time I saw him, I think, was at Coach Landry's funeral. He was at Tom's funeral. So, what a great asset to the university he was.
Well, what do you remember about Coach Ball? I mean, it must have been pretty special playing under a guy like that.
The one thing that I remember, my dad and mom came up when we played Arkansas. When we played them, and it rained, so they wouldn't let us play on the varsity field in Lewisville. So we had the game on the practice field, so we wouldn't tear it up for the game that week. And so I introduced my dad to Coach Ball, and I said, Dad, this is Sammy Ball, our coach. And my dad, who was 6'3" and weighed about 200 pounds, was a giant to me, and he looked like a little kid when he met Sammy Ball, because Sammy Ball was his hero. But Coach Ball was, I tell you what, he was the funniest coach in the world. And he led the NFL a couple of years in a row in interceptions, punting, and passing. So he was a pretty good athlete, and he could still punt the ball. Of course, then he was probably 54, 55 when he came up here, and he could still punt, he could still pass, and he was a funny man. He was fun to play football, because I asked him one time, we were going to OU, and I was one of the freshman captains, so they said, what are we going to wear down there? Because we took a bus to OU, and I went and asked Coach Ball. I said, Coach, what do you want us to wear to travel to OU? He said, I don't give a damn if you come naked. He said, come ready to play football. he was a funny son. I loved him. I went to his funeral. What a great guy.
Yes, super. So at the end of your freshman year, as you indicated earlier, I wish you hired a new head coach, Phil Cutchin. And what do you remember about his coaching background, his coaching philosophy?
I remember the first meeting. And there was a lot of us in there, 100 and something in the first meeting. And I remember one line he said, there's some of you guys here don't want to play football. And he said, I'm going to find out who you are. And as you know, he did. He ran off, I forget how many. It was like the Junction Boys. Of course, he was one of the Junction Boys with Bear Bryant at Texas A&M. And they made a movie about the Junction Boys, and he made the workouts really, really, really hard. And where the practice field is, they had the little chain link fence around it, and they had the hedge around it, and they had them two gates there where you went in. And Cutchin would stand there and open that gate, and he'd let all the players in, and he'd shut the gate and throw a chain around it and lock it. And he had the only key. And if you quit during practice, you had to crawl over the hedge, over the fence, to quit. And I've seen 15 guys at one time leave, and so I think he ran off. I'll tell you what, at the end of my sophomore year, which was the next year, I think we suited out 30 players or something, 27 or 30 players when we played OU my sophomore year. And
you started with about 100 guys, over 100 guys?
Yeah, 100, 120, 130, something like that.
You wound up with about 30-something?
Yeah, well, he cut most of them, or a lot of them, during that spring, and then the next year, during 2 days, they slowly dwindled down to, I forget, we had 30 or 35 players on the team at the end of the season.
Now, he had been at Alabama, is that right?
Alabama, A&M before that, and Kentucky before that. And he brought in a lot of people that he had coached with or played with, Willie Zapalak, who was my coach my second semester, my freshman year, I was still a linebacker, and Willie Zappalak was the linebacker coach. And Elwood Kettler, who was one of the Junction boys also, was the backfield coach. And when they moved me to fullback, then he was my coach.
Was Jim Stanley in that
Jim
first
Stanley
day?
was there. Yeah. Jungle Jim was there. He sure was. And he's a great guy. But Leon Fuller, who was a defensive backfield coach, that played at Alabama, and he was only like 6 years older than us, you know, so he could still run and tackle and show you stuff. So
you probably still remember his wife too, don't you?
I remember her very well.
Next question.
She was a pretty lady, and they lived over in the dorm with us in Benning. Had an apartment over there, and Carol was her name, and a little redheaded lady, and she was beautiful. We were all in love with her.
Right. Well, you know, a lot of stories about that first spring. What was it? Not in great detail, but typically, how long was the practice? What was it like? It must have been pretty brutal.
Practice were like probably 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and there was a lot of physical drills. You know, we did that barrel roll, that 3-man barrel roll seemed like forever. We ran wind sprints. I don't think we actually played that much football to start with. You know, my freshman year.
Tackling practice.
Tackling practice. I mean, running. I mean, we did all kinds of physical drills, a lot of one-on-one stuff, pushing and shoving and fighting, and you know, and if you got in a fight, you just got in a fight. They never broke up the fight, you know, and then you finally found out that if you got in a fight, you're still gonna have to practice, you know. So all you did was wear yourself out. So there wasn't a lot of fights after the first 4 or 5.
Well, you obviously had an outstanding career at Oklahoma State University. You were, as I recall, you started, of course, all 3 years, all Big 8, at least 1 year, maybe 2 years. You led the Big 8 in rushing.
I led the Big 8 in rushing 1 year, and I was second the next year, I think. My junior year, I think I made all Big 8, and my senior year, I didn't, or vice versa. I don't know. I was like second team all Big 8 1 year.
Well, thinking back on that, on your career, were there some special games that stand out in your mind, special plays that you'd
Well, I mean, probably the biggest game, you know, we hadn't beat OU in like 30 years. And my senior year, we beat them 17-16 in Norman. So that was a special game, and I don't think I played that well in that game, but, you know, at least we beat them. But the game I remember most, and the one that people remind me of, we played Nebraska, and they beat us, I think, 17-14, and I got stopped on the last play of the game on the 2-yard line or something, and which was my fault, I guess, for not scoring. But Coach Devaney, that was my senior year, because Coach Devaney came out and shook hands with me, and he said, "I'll see you in a couple of months," or something like. Because I played an All-American game, and he was the coach, and Bob and I were friends from then on. You know, I know working for U.S. Tobacco, we did college rodeo, and I went to Nebraska one time, and I went by and saw Coach Devaney, and he took me out to eat, and I mean, showed me around the campus, and what a great guy.
Well, sort of stating the obvious, you weren't blessed with great speed or great size. And
that's to say the least, Gill. No, I couldn't outrun Rusty Martin, and he was a defensive tackle, you know.
Well, I just want to put that out there. But
yeah, it's true.
He had a great career, and of course went on the NFL. So, I mean, it's a serious question. What do you attribute your success to? I mean, looking at your size and speed, you'd say this guy wouldn't be an all Big 8. He wouldn't be, you know, NFL material.
True. I don't know. You know, I mean, running backs should and I always do attribute whatever you do to the offensive line. But a lot of it has to do with, I think, growing up, not poor, because I didn't think we were poor when I was growing up. We never had a lot. But I think determination is, you know, I wanted to do good. And I wanted to do good because of my teammates. You know, I mean, OSU didn't have a winning record in the last, I don't know how many years before I got here, but you know, I think Cutchin, by weeding out the players that really didn't want to stay, you know, he brought us all closer together. I know when you lose, winning doesn't bring you closer together. Losing brings you closer together, because everybody else hates you, you know. So the guys I played with, that was, everybody else on campus hated us, I think, but so you had an inner strength of a team, and I think that's what helped us win some games later on.
Well, there's some particular teammates you remember playing with, the coaches, or some memories you have of stories you can tell.
Well, I mean, Rusty Martin, of course, we're friends, and we're friends now. He comes back to Oklahoma State games, but there's so many. Gosh, I played with John Ward. Leon Ward, his brother, was a great linebacker and defensive end for us, and of course he got killed in a boating accident, fishing accident, and drowned. Great guy. Hugh McCrabb, another guy that, and that's an interesting story. See, Hugh McCrabb was an all-state fullback, and I was second team all-district honorable mention linebacker. And then when they moved McCrabb to nose tackle when Cutchin got here, and he hated it, and they moved me to fullback, which is what he should have been playing, and he was a great running back. But he was bigger than I was, so Cutchin moved him to nose tackle, and he was a great nose tackle. But that's not what he wanted to do. And he moved me to fullback, and that wasn't what I wanted to do. But it turned out okay.
Well, I'd heard Walter's rumors that he put the best guys on the defensive side of the ball. Was that?
That's probably true. That's why he probably moved me from linebacker to fullback to get me off of that side of the line.
Oh, Lord. What kind of, switching subject, but still at OSU, just your student experience, outside of football. What do you remember about OSU? Some of the.
Well, I enjoyed going to school up here. Of course, I was in, like I said, pre-vet, so I took a lot of animal courses. Meets. The most, probably the best thing that I remember was genetics. I took genetics and advanced genetics, and I loved it. I made an A both years because I really, when you can take two animals and figure out what the offspring's going to be based on their genetics, it gives you kind of a happy feeling, So I enjoyed the western side of Oklahoma State, which there's a big west in Oklahoma State, thank goodness. But I enjoyed going to Old Dairy Building there and getting milk and donuts in the morning, or going over to Animal Husbandry Building, which is no longer there. I hated it when I came up here and it was gone, because that was my landmark, because we had a lot of classes in the Animal Husbandry Building. But I enjoyed the western lifestyle of Oklahoma State. I wouldn't have fit in at OU or Texas or anywhere else. But I fit in at Oklahoma State.
Were you involved at all with rodeo?
Well, I didn't rodeo here. Oklahoma State had a rodeo team, but I couldn't because of the NCAA rules, because in college rodeo, they win money, and you couldn't do both. So I didn't rodeo on the rodeo team until the second semester of my senior year, after my eligibility was up.
What about some of your favorite hangouts on the campus and off? Can you share some of those?
Well, we had Deeks was, and then it turned into Spavs. Spavital, one of the coaches, bought it after he retired, and that was one hangout just because of Coach Spavital. But then the favorite one for the western side of Oklahoma State, the rodeo western type Cowboys hung out at Millie's, which most people now know it as George's Stables, but I still call it Millie's because that's what it was. And it's a little, it's still just like it was, it's a little western bar, and that was a good place to hang out. Of course, I didn't drink beer then or anything. I just went down there and hung out with the big guys.
Now, there's a story that I remember about.
I'd never rode a horse in Millie's, okay? I've heard that story. People have said, oh, yeah, I remember you riding a horse in Millie's. I didn't have a horse up here till my senior year, and me and Rusty rented a little place out east of town that had a little roping arena on it. I never brought a horse in town in my life, but I've heard that story over and over and over, and it's a lie. I never rode a horse in Millie's.
So we got it down officially now.
Yeah.
But I think there was a story about somebody did ride a horse in there.
I think a lot of people rode horses in there, but I wasn't one of them. Well, they used to have Western Week here, and all the fraternities, the Sigma News and Sigma Chi's. They all, that one week, they all dressed up in cowboy outfits, and they had the big Frontier Ball, was that what it's called?
Sigma News.
Sigma Nu had the Frontier Ball, because Click was, he was a cowboy for a week.
It's a stretch, isn't it?
Jim Click. Let me get the whole name out there.
From Altus, Oklahoma.
Altus, Oklahoma.
All right. Well, Walt, you talk about some of the special things you have at OSU. Were there some special memories you have of your time at OSU that stand out more than others?
Most of it is athletic related, like I said, beating OU. I mean, that was a big milestone for Oklahoma State, and it was the last game I played here, so it was that is a very special meaning to me. And but really, the guys I played with are, just because all our occupations changed when you get out of here. Your friends don't, and I mean the Jim Flurries and Larry Elliott's and McCrabbs and Rusty Martin and Leon Ward and Charlie Harper, who was another guy that went on to play for the New York Giants. They don't change. I know I'm missing a lot of guys that were very dear friends of mine, but the people I met here at Oklahoma State, not only in athletics but around. I mean the farmhouse fraternity over there. These guys were. Most of them came from small ranches and small towns, and so we fit together. And they also had rodeo and vocational agriculture as a common bond. So it was another group that I fit in with. And the only other, I got to mention one other thing too. Yojiro Yutaki Abata, the little Japanese guy that won 2 gold medals at 2 different Olympics. He hung out with me and Rusty. And the rodeo side of the campus, the western side of the campus, because he liked it better than anything, and he would go to Millie's with us and stuff, and what a great guy. And when I was inducted into the Oklahoma State Hall of Fame, he flew from Tokyo, Japan to Stillwater to be here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You must have felt pretty special for that. Wow.
Yeah.
Great. You were, so in 1966, spring of 66, you were drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. And was it exciting for you all to be going back close to your hometown and playing for Dallas?
Well, see, back then, Gill, they had, they were still in the AFL, NFL. That was the last year before the merger. Okay. And so I was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs and drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. Okay. You probably never knew that.
Did not know, no.
But I was drafted like in the 15th or 16th round by Kansas City and was drafted in the 5th round by Dallas. And it wasn't even my choice, if the money had been different, but it was about the same money to go to Dallas or Kansas City, and Dallas was 30 miles from home, so it was like going home.
Imagine your family was pretty excited.
They were, and and Dad and them, that's another thing. My mom and Dad never missed a football game at Oklahoma State. Wow. And they couldn't afford to drive to Nebraska, Lincoln, or Ames, Iowa, or anything, but Daddy'd get off work on Friday, Mother'd have the car packed, and they would head out, and they'd drive all night and get there in time for the game. And then after the game, I'd get to see them for about 15 minutes after we showered and fixed to get back on the bus to get on a plane to come back, and they'd turn around and drive all day and all night to get back home.
So they're making all the away games as well, all of them.
Every game.
Wow.
Every game. They never missed a game when I was in college. So I've always appreciated that.
You talking about the 2 offers being about the same. Do you mind sharing what your initial salary and your bonus was?
Okay. Well, I talked to Kansas City briefly. They sent a guy down, and and their offer was about the same. But Dallas offered me like $15,000 signing bonus.
Wow.
I said, what the hell am I going to do with all this money? And my first salary was $15,000 at Dallas. And again, I thought, my God, I'm rich. And they gave me a new Pontiac Grand Prix and a new inline horse trailer, which people made a big deal out of that, about the horse trailer as being part of my signing bonus. But I asked them for it. I said, I want a Miley inline trailer. And they said, what is an inline trailer? And it's, where 2 horses are head to butt behind each other, and it's a long trailer. And I said, I want one. And they said, okay, we'll get you one. And so they did. But people made a big deal. I got more print out of wanting a horse trailer than anything else. But I never had a new horse trailer in my life, so it was a big deal for me. So
did you trade your Pontiac in for a truck eventually?
well, that's the only car I've ever had in my life is that 1965 Pontiac Grand Prix, and I kept it about 6 months, and then I traded it off for a truck because I don't fit in the car. I mean, it's not my personality.
I'm trying to imagine the Pontiac pulling a truck.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit. So you played, of course, under Tom Landry, legendary coach, and
Great man.
What do you remember about Coach Landry?
Coach Landry was probably one of the most, one of the smartest guys I ever met, because you think about all the things that he invented that's now still prevalent in pro football. You know, the multiple set offense, motion, divide, you know, where they put people in motion across the backfield and stuff. He invented the flex defense.
Wow.
He put in the shotgun offense.
Really?
Oh, yeah, because Eddie LeBaron, who was the quarterback, the original quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys before Meredith got there, was like 5'8", and he couldn't see over the line, so Tom put him back 5 yards and snapped the ball to him. So Tom invented the shotgun offense too.
And that was the reason for it?
That was the reason for it.
That's a great story.
But he was a great guy. One thing about Coach Landry is he had you were graded on how you did in games, and if you graded good, you continued to play. If you graded bad, you knew that somebody else would take your place, and that's the way he ran the team. You know, I mean, if you were good enough, you got to play. If you weren't, you didn't. And he was fair, because he would sit you down and talk to you about, you know, what you need to do. You're not doing this. You're not doing this. This is okay, and this is okay, and none of it's great, but it's all right. You know, and you're going to have to improve here and here. But he was a great guy, and I mean. A very fair man. He didn't hold grudges. I mean, he was as honest and as fair as I've ever met anybody.
When he was real strong in FCA.
A big Christian, FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. He was an honest man. I mean, he was one of the greatest people. Probably 3 or 4 of the great people I've met in my life, including John Wayne. Tom's right up there with the Duke.
That's pretty strong.
That's a big compliment right there.
It really is. Well, can you say highlights? I'm sure there's a lot of them, but can you kind of, in your career with the Dallas Cowboys, can you think of some special seasons, some special games that you
Well, I mean, winning the Super Bowl, of course, was probably the highlight against the Miami Dolphins.
Super Bowl ring here, you got
yeah, yeah, and I wear it, and I don't wear it all the time, but every time I come to like Oklahoma State or a Dallas Cowboy event, I try to wear it, because if I don't, people say, "Where's your Super Bowl ring?" And so, you know, But the year before, I think probably the biggest game I remember playing in was against San Francisco in the playoffs. The year before we won the Super Bowl, we beat San Francisco, and that meant that we were going to the Super Bowl. Finally, you know, Dallas had been close. We've been in the playoffs. Well, they made the playoffs my rookie year, and I thought that was because of me. But it was the first time they ever made the playoffs, and they made it every year until my last year. We didn't make the playoffs my last year, but made the playoffs for 8 years in a row, and we got beaten by San Francisco the year before to go to the Super Bowl, and we played San Francisco again, and we beat them, and so that was a big milestone for Dallas, because it's the first year they went to the Super Bowl, even though we got beat 17-16 or 16-13 by Baltimore in the Super Bowl in Miami, and then the next year we played Miami in New Orleans and beat them 24-3. So we were finally the world champions. And
so you played two Super Bowls.
2 Super Bowls.
It's a great feeling.
2 Super Bowls and 2 Pro Bowls, and Pro Bowls are. They were great. It was a great honor. It was a bad game to play in, because all you're trying to do is not get hurt, because you don't want to get hurt.
You look like you're trying, but you don't want to.
Yeah. You know, well, they changed the rules a little bit. There's no blitzing. You know, there's no cut blocks. It's you know, it's a different game, but it's an honor to get picked, because the coaches and the players in the league picked the Pro Bowl. And well, then they have some of the sports writers too, but most of it is based on the players you played against. You can't vote for anybody for the Pro Bowl if you haven't played against them, which makes it even better.
Okay. Well, so how many years? What years did you play from?
I played from '66 through '75.
Okay.
I played 9 years.
9 years. And I understand an injury outside of football shortened your career.
Well, I went to work for U.S. Tobacco. I started doing commercials for them in '71, the year we won the Super Bowl, and I worked for them in the off season. And so we did college rodeo, which was a special event that we did, a promotional event we did. And so they got an idea. They said, "Hey, Walt, you Bulldog?" Said, "Why don't we have you Bulldog against the regional champ? Have a match Bulldog in at every rodeo you go to." You know, and I thought, well, I'm there, and and I Bulldog, so it's not a big deal. And so at the college finals in Bozeman, Montana, in 1970, well, actually 74, after the season, they matched me against the college, the guy that was ahead for the year in steer ration. And I caught a steer and turned him a flip, and it hyperextended my knee and tore a ligament. And so that is probably the greatest thing ever happened to me, Gill, because in football, as you know, you have skills and they're good, and then they start getting less and less and less, and you know where you need to be, but I was slow, and this made me slower, and you can't get to the holes as quick as you used to, and so I retired, but U.S. Tobacco offered me a job when I retired, and we started a promotions department, which they didn't have at the time, and I started doing special events for them, and that lasted 32 years.
I want to come back and pick up on it, but I want to ask you a quick question. Were there some players do you remember and of course, there's a lot of Pro Bowlers and some really outstanding players, but there are guys you remember especially?
Well, I mean, the Bob Lillies. Bob Lilly was a great guy and a great player. Roger Staubach, I got to play with him, for 5 years. Don Meredith, who was probably one of the greatest Dallas Cowboy quarterbacks ever. He just didn't have the other elements of the team around him. He didn't have enough good players around him, but he was an excellent player. Dan Reeves, who went on to be the coach of the New York Giants and the Denver Broncos first, and then the New York Giants, and then the Atlanta Falcons. He was my roommate for 4 years. Charlie Waters was my roommate for 4 years. Leroy Jordan, who was All-American at Alabama and All-Pro, was my roommate for a year. Cliff Harris, who came from Arkadelphia, Arkansas, as a free agent, was probably one of the greatest free safeties in the league. Ralph Neely, that went to OU, was an outstanding offensive tackle. John Nyland was another one that was drafted. He was the #1 draft choice the year that I came in. Chuck Halley was All-Pro many times. The only player to be picked for the MVP of the Super Bowl on a losing team was Chuck Halley when Baltimore beat us. But I played with some Mel Renfro. He was many times All-Pro. I can name. I'm thinking. I'm going back these steps. Dwayne Thomas, Calvin Hill, Drew Pearson. Played with Drew. I thought he was going to get killed his rookie year because he's a little skinny thing, and I thought they was going to break him in two. But he turned out to be a pretty good receiver.
Well, what was it like to play for Dallas? And that's just, America's team, quote unquote, and special.
Yeah, and what a stupid title. Yeah. It's not like what Green Bay is not in America, or San Francisco's not in America. I don't know where they come up with that title, but all the players hated that title, because you always got some ridicule from the fans when you were playing on the road, But America's team, Dallas did a great job of promoting, like all teams should. Tex Schramm he started the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders. He was an innovator. He started all kinds of stuff, and one of them was the Cheerleaders, and now every team has cheerleaders. Back then, Dallas was the only one that had cheerleaders, and so Dallas did a great job of promoting their image, and their image was a nice guy image. We didn't have any we had some, they kind of hid some of the outlaws we had, but they didn't have any real bad guys, and so they really promoted the clean image of the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, which is, like I said, was I didn't like the title, but it kind of worked. And Dallas is still popular. I mean, Dallas is popular. They sell more merchandise than probably just about any other team in the league, and even in losing seasons.
The organization's changed a little bit, though, with the change of ownership.
It's changed quite a bit, and now they've got that big stadium down there, and it's a heck of a stadium. It's not as good as the one we've got here, but it's close, It's too big. It's dang near too big, Gill, I'm telling you. It's huge. But it holds 93,000 or something like that, and they got the first Super Bowl in Dallas. And if Dallas were to make the Super Bowl, that would be the first time a Super Bowl team has ever played in their own stadium.
Wow.
See, the two I played in, we played one in New Orleans, one in Miami. So really no team has ever played on their home field. But Dallas has an opportunity this year to do that.
You've you talked about after you left for many years working with U.S. Tobacco Company. Can you talk a little bit more about that? You probably gained almost as much notoriety from your commercials
More.
as you did from playing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
When they when they call me to do the commercial, because NFL Films did a film called The Hunters. And it was on 3 pro football players that had weird off-season occupations. Like Carl Eller with the Minnesota Vikings, he was trying to be an actor. So they followed him around to acting schools and stuff. Ben Davidson with the Oakland Raiders, big defensive guy with the Oakland Raiders, he rode motorcycles. And I don't mean the jumping kind, but he studied topography, and he'd get on his motorcycle in California and he'd drive, to Maine and back and just toured on a motorcycle, And I rodeoed. And they came out to Mineral Wells, Texas, where I was entered in a rodeo, and filmed me bulldogging, and they did some interviews and stuff. And during the interview, I was dipping snuff, and they didn't take it out or anything, because you could advertise at that time, and it was acceptable on TV. And one of the guys with U.S. Tobacco saw that film, and they said, "Hey, we've been looking for a guy to do commercials for us. We found him." So they called Warwick, Welch, and Miller, which was the advertising agency in New York City, and they said, "Talk to this guy. We need to do a commercial." So they came down and talked to me and offered me a lot of money to do a commercial, more than I was making playing football. And so I went to Tex Schramm, who was the general manager of the Cowboys, and I said, "Tex," I said, "I got this deal to do a commercial, And he said, "Walt, I don't think you ought to do it. It'd be bad for your image." So I called him back and I said, "I can't do that. I don't want to do the commercial, And so instead of getting somebody else to do it, they waited a year and they called me back the next year and they offered me more money. So I went to Tex and I said, "Tex, let me tell you something. I can make more money doing one commercial than I can playing in the Super Bowl." I said, "And my image you're worried about, y'all are the one that have created that. The rodeo, the dipping snuff, the roping, riding horses." I said, "That's how y'all
Cowboys.
bill me everywhere. The Cowboy's Cowboy." I said, I said, "If there's no rules in the book anywhere with the NFL, I'm gonna do the commercial." And it's one of the greatest things I ever did, because just a pinch became a household word, and
Pinch between your cheek and
just
gum.
a pinch between your cheek and gum, and people actually see football players. You don't ever really see them. You see them, you see a number, but you don't ever see their face. So for the first time, I was on TV without a football helmet on. So that, you're right. It probably did more for my popularity than whatever I could do on a football field.
Well, let me back and ask you though. So you were rodeoing off season, and in this area you can't do that. They got contracts, but at that time you could do that.
Well, there was contracts then, and Coach Landry talked to me. See, and when I was a rookie, I was playing on the kamikaze squad. I was returning punts and kickoffs and covering punts and kickoffs, and so Don Perkins, one of the greatest fullbacks Dallas ever had, and if he hadn't retired, I'd still be sitting on the bench because he was unbelievable. But I knew I wasn't going to play unless the game was out of hand one way or the other, So the night before game, we stayed at the Holiday Inn on Central Expressway in Dallas, and we'd have a meeting, and then we'd have a little light supper, and then you were off until 11 o'clock when the curfew was. So I would get this buddy, Bill Robinson, this buddy of mine, to carry the horses to a little amateur rodeo over in Mansfield. And then I would get up during the rodeo, so I would drive after meeting over to the rodeo, bulldog, and then drive back by 11 o'clock. And that worked good for about 3 weeks, and then somebody called Coach Landry and said, Tom, we think that's great. Y'all let Walt come over here and bulldog the night before a football game. And that was the end of that. He called me in his office and said, there won't be any more of that. And he said, you know what, if you get hurt rodeoing, we don't have to pay you. There's a clause in your contract about doing stuff outside of football that's dangerous, and we do think that's dangerous. And I tried to tell him that ignorance is what makes a sport dangerous. I said, the more you know about it, the less dangerous it becomes. And I said, Tom, I've been bulldogging since I was in high school. And I wouldn't ride a motorcycle for nothing in the world, but people that do think that's one of the safest sports in the world. But he said, I'm just telling you, he said, I'm not telling you not to do it, but if you get hurt, we don't have to pay you. So I kept bulldogging.
Did you also, in the off season, did you bulldog pretty regularly?
Bulldog all the time in off season.
Was there any other events other than bulldogging that you did?
Well, I started out, Gill, in high school. I rode bareback horses and bulls. Mm-hmm. And then I got too big. Even though I wasn't real big, I got too big to ride bulls, because most good bull riders weigh 140, 150 pounds, because your upper body weight throws you off balance, and so the littler you are, the better it is, really, and there's been a few that were big and tall, but not many. And so I quit doing that, and I started bulldogging. This buddy of mine, like I said, Bill Robinson, he bulldogged and roped calves. So we'd go to these high school rodeos, and he'd say, get in the bulldogging. I said, I don't know how. He said, doesn't matter, because back then they charged you like $20. You could enter one event or 6 events, whatever you wanted to, and it didn't cost you more money. He said, hell, it won't cost nothing. So then I started bulldogging some in high school and roping calves.
So you told me about your friend, Bill Robinson. Is this in your hometown there in Lewisville, when you were growing up?
I ran into him. I qualified for the Texas State High School Rodeo in the bareback riding 2 years, and I ran into him down there, and he lived in Irving, which is about 15 miles south of Lewisville. And after the high school finals, he said, there's a rodeo next week in Bryan, College Station, high school rodeo. You want to go? I said, yeah. And so we went, and we're friends until he passed away 27 years ago.
So you started in high school.
Mm-hmm. We had a high school rodeo team.
Okay.
In Lewisville High School. You couldn't win money. You won ribbons and trophies and buckles and stuff like that. But yeah.
I think we were talking maybe off camera, off mic earlier, about how you got interested in horses since you actually kind of lived on the edge of town and didn't live out on a ranch or a farm. How did your...
Well, I got interested in... I've always loved animals, and I've always wanted to be a cowboy. Everybody wants to be a cowboy. I think there's a song that, but my uncle had a farm outside of town, and he had a couple of horses, and I'd go out there and ride. But there's one lady a lady named Tommy Jane Allen that lived about, half a mile from us there in Lewisville, and she had about 10-acre ranch. She had like 10 acres and had 5 or 6 horses, and she ran barrels at the rodeos, and she hired me when I was like, 8, 9 years old to clean stalls. And she had like 6 stalls to clean, and for cleaning stalls, she didn't pay me. She let me ride for an hour, and she taught me the correct way to saddle, to bridle, and what pieces of equipment did to a horse and why you used them and stuff. And she really taught me how to ride. You have questions, or is it getting boring, Gill?
No, sir. I was thinking about what was coming to mind was your wood carving. I think I said one time whittling, and you corrected me.
Well, it's
but seriously, you do a lot of wood carving. Can you kind of tell me where that came from and a little bit about your hobby?
Well, actually, the whittling or wood carving, the difference between a whittler and a wood carver don't have to tell you what it is when he gets done, and a whittler does. So, in training camp when I was a rookie, and I missed most of training camp when I was a rookie because I played an All-Star game and All-American game and the Senior Bowl, but the first year I was in camp, I would get bored during the day. We had 2 workouts, morning, afternoon, but you have about 3 or 4 hours in between there where you go back and rest. And I couldn't sleep, So I'd be walking the halls and stuff. And this friend of mine, Bill Robinson, I rodeoed with, that summer after football season was over, we went to a little place, Harvey's Barbecue in Irving, Texas. And we went in there, and this guy had whittlings everywhere. I mean, he had been whittling for like 50 years, so he had all kinds of whittlings, man. I mean, and stuff. And I thought, God, that'd be great if I could learn to whittle a chain or a ball in a box. Or. And he wouldn't, I said, hey, Brother Harv, I said, how do you do this? He said, he said, it's just, you do this. He wouldn't tell me nothing, So I kept going down there, and I'd sit over there. He had a place in that barbecue building to whittle. He had a bench sitting over there, and all these old timers coming there and whittle. So I got this whittling, and so finally he come over and he said, come back here in the back, let me show you something. So he went back there and showed me how to cut out a chain, how to mark it off, and how to start whittling it. And
when you say cut off a chain, can you explain what you?
Well, a chain is links together, and it looks impossible to me, when I started. But there's a correct way to block it out or rough it out, where you take off all the excess wood that you're not going to use to start with, and draw out the chain links on there, and then start whittling it. And I asked him, I said, Brother Harf, why didn't you show me this a month ago when I was in here? He said, because if I showed everybody that came in the door that thought they want to whittle, how to whittle, he said, I couldn't cook barbecue. I wouldn't have time. But he said, you're going to whittle. And he said, so he taught me a lot. And, of course, then the next year when I went to training camp, I had me a tackle box full of knives. And that's when you carry a knife on an airplane. I carried a whole tackle box full of them and checked a bunch of pieces of wood to whittle on. So I started whittling in training camp, and I still whittle.
What are some of the things you do?
I've done some stuff for Oklahoma State. I did a Cowboy limo, which is a horse that looks like a weenie dog. It's got like 4 saddles on it or 3 saddles on it, So, and I do people, I do caricatures of not anybody in particular, but cowboys and horses, and I whittle chains and puzzles and all kinds of stuff.
Texas Hold'em boxes.
Texas Hold'em. I've done some card boxes, but it gives me a lot of pleasure. I donate a lot of stuff to Oklahoma State, and the one thing I did a Cowboy limo that brought like $5,400, and then there's another guy at the Brighter Orange deal said, "I'll give $54 if you whittle me one." So I whittled him one. So I helped my stupid whittling helped raise a little over $10,000 at one of them deals. But I donate stuff at every Brighter Orange that they ask me to.
And I know you brought about $5,000 one year for a Texas Hold'em box.
A box, card box, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy doing it for Oklahoma State. And I've got a bunch of stuff whittled at the house. Don't tell the Alumni Association, but I've got a bunch of stuff in reserve right now, so I won't have to whittle it overnight.
That's great. Now, you cite poetry occasionally too.
Sometimes.
Okay. Tell me about that. Where did that come from?
Bill Robinson, this buddy of mine.
Is it Robertson?
Robinson, R-O-B-I-N-S-O-N.
Okay.
And we used to go to rodeos, and he had a car and a trailer, and so I rode with him because I didn't have a car or a trailer or a horse, and he did. And so, and we'd be driving like to Livingston, Texas, which is down in East Texas, to a high school rodeo, and he started in just reciting the Cremation of Sam McGee, which is a poem that he did. And I thought, God dang, that's neat. And he knew a whole bunch of them. So then I got interested in it, and I got interested in the cowboy poetry with Baxter Black or Red Stegall, Waddy Mitchell, some of those guys that are really, really good that write funny stuff. And so then I started using the poetry in some of the speeches I had, because I would always keep one of them things in the back of my mind, because, speaking, sometimes you draw a blank. You don't know what else to say, and I could always fill in, and while I was doing the poem, I'd be thinking about what I need to say next, so I just started doing them.
Now, if you got a favorite you could recite for us?
Sure. Baxter Black did I heard him do this one time, and then I called him and had him send it to me, but it's like people are funny critters. He said, people are a lot like animals. The herding instincts of people are like the herding instincts of animals, and so he wrote this little short saying about people being funny critters. And if you listen, you'll hear yourself in here. This is an audience participation saying, so you have to be part of it, Gill. So when I say people are funny critters, you say, what do you mean? That's all you got to remember.
Okay.
What do you mean? And every time I say people are funny critters, you say, what do you mean? You'll hear yourself in here. People are funny critters.
What do you mean?
Well, there's apple pie bakers and crooked bookmakers and blondes and brunetters and birthday forgetters and chicken fry lovers and blue-eyed soul brothers and drinkers and boozers and winners and losers and elephant trainers and tireless campaigners and fixers and menders and paperclip benders and goers and stayers and pinochle players and handkerchief users and tissue abusers and interstate bikers and wilderness hikers and joggers and addicts and handball fanatics and kissers and tellers and friends of the fellers and lovers and fighters and fingernail biters and mayonnaise dippers and miracle whippers and newspaper readers and drivers and speeders and overweight hookers and magazine lookers and people with answers and bottomless dancers and quivering flunkers and basketball dunkers and readers and thinkers and double scotch drinkers and soda straw manglers and bar napkin stranglers and teasers and criers and high rolling flyers and uncles and sisters and passive resistors and virtuous girlies and sillies and squirrelies and weirdos and sickies and $5 quickies and xylophone pickers and popsicle lickers and yawners and nappers and one handicappers and zippy old timers and lunatic rhymers. People are funny critters.
What do you mean?
All right, you didn't forget your line. That's good. That's good.
That's good. Thank you, Walt. I appreciate it. Yeah. That's great. Oh, we were talking about your poetry. I appreciate you. One thing I want to kind of share a little bit. I know you still have a strong bond with your former teammates, and you talked about it with OSU. And you've been some of the guys you stay in contact with. And I want to say this if I can. Frankly, a lot of former high-profile athletes really don't remember where they went to school. They kind of forget after they've gone. And through the years, you've maintained a close working relationship with OSU. You've helped us, as we indicated earlier, particularly in the Dallas area, a lot of our events there. You've helped the athletics department over the years with promos. You're here this weekend to help with the Alumni Association. So my question is, why have you been so loyal to OSU? Why has it been so important to you to stay connected?
Excuse me. Because I wouldn't be where I am today without Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, people say, why'd you go to Oklahoma State? That's the only school that offered me a scholarship. So when you only got one to choose from, it doesn't take you long to make up your mind. But Oklahoma State gave me an opportunity that nobody else would. And a lot of people I have talked to, Coach Royal. I got to be friends with Coach Royal, and I said, Coach, why didn't you look at films on me? He said, yeah. He said, you were a linebacker in high school. He said, and you weren't worth a crap. And I said, okay. But Oklahoma State took a chance on me, no matter what the reason. I mean, I think they took a chance on me because they had to, but they gave me an opportunity. And once I was up here, I don't think I wanted to let Oklahoma State down and for taking a chance on me. And so, like I said, my beginning in football actually started at Oklahoma State. And learning how to get along with people and all kinds of people at Oklahoma State was a great attribute that I've used for the last 40, 50 years, So I guess the easiest way to say it is everything that I am today I owe to Oklahoma State.
Appreciate that. Walt, you've seen the campus, recently. You're looking at it today. What do you think about all the new buildings, all the expansion? Has it changed a little bit?
Josh was bringing me over here, and I'm looking. I'm saying, I don't recognize any of this, because the one thing that I remember about the campus of Oklahoma State was the way it was laid out.
Mm-hmm.
It was so simple to get around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you look for the library and got your bearings off of it, and or the student union, and or Old Central. And and you can find your way around. It's grown, and that's not a bad thing, because the good thing, the girl I'm dating, her daughter's a senior up here, and she started last year, and she wasn't even going to Oklahoma State. She had a scholarship to University of Hawaii, which I don't ever understand why she didn't take that. But anyway, and I said, have you thought about going to Oklahoma State? And she said, no. And because she's in communications, and I said, I heard they have a great communications department up there, media communications stuff. And so she said, well, I'd like to go up there. And she came up here, and she was just like I was. When she got on campus, she was home. And, it's, but it has changed a lot, Gill, since we were up here, Theta Pond's still there, thank goodness. They probably fill that in one day and build a building over it, but it has changed a lot, but it's still a small feeling campus. It's not a small campus anymore, but it's got that small town feel that people like me appreciate coming from a small town. You don't feel, if you go to the University of Texas, nothing against them, or Texas Tech, well, Texas Tech is kind of hit out, but SMU or one of the TCU, they're in big towns, and not that Stillwater is small, but Austin doesn't have a small town feel. I never felt comfortable there, and so I'm glad Coach Earl thought I was a bad linebacker, because I wouldn't have fit in there. But here, I think everybody fits in. Whether you're from a small town, a big high school program, a small high, everybody fits in. There's a niche here at Oklahoma State for everybody.
Well, what do you think about the direction of the football program at Oklahoma State?
Well, I love Mike Gundy. I think he's a great man. I think he takes up for his players, which I appreciated when he stood up for them. And I think he's a great coach. And they're getting, the stadium, of course, God bless Boone Pickens,
Yeah.
The stadium is a great asset in recruiting. Lewisville was a great asset in recruiting when I came up here, because it's the biggest thing I'd ever seen. But the stadium is state of the art. I can't think of, and I've been to the University of Texas, I've been to the one in Texas Tech, I've been to SMU and TC. This stadium, by far, is the greatest college football stadium that I've ever been to. I'm not saying it's the best one in the United States, because I hadn't been to all of them, but it is the best one I've ever been to.
You got some special amenities in that west end zone for the players that they don't need at McElroy Dining Hall.
I know, and they took me on a tour of the stadium, and the coaching facilities, the coaching offices and everything, and the weight rooms and the dining rooms and the suites, and it's absolutely, and the way they positioned everything, Gallagher Hall is there at one end, and of course in the end zone, the rounded bowl at the other end. But it's just a great stadium. It's got a great feel to it. We would have loved to play it here, wouldn't we?
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit, where are you living now? What are you doing now?
I live in Argyle, Texas, which is about 11 miles north of Lewisville, northwest of Lewisville, where I grew up, and about 7 miles south of Denton, Texas. And I'm unemployed. I retired December 31st from U.S. Tobacco this last year, and
you had worked with them since, you talked about earlier in the interview, since
71. I went to work for them part-time in 71 and started work for them full-time in 75.
After you retired from
Right,
NFL.
after I retired from my bulldogging accident with the Dallas Cowboys. And so I was with them full-time up until about 8 years ago, and then I was a consultant in their promotion and marketing department for the other 8 years I was with them, and then I retired there. So I don't have a job, Gail. You need an assistant? But no, I started a restaurant in Lewisville. It's called Walt Garrison's, by an odd name. But
Where's
it's
it located?
a steak place in Lewisville. It's in Parker Square, which is west of Lewisville, in a big shopping area. But which has been fun, getting back into business, and I still whittle a lot. I still rope. So and I got 32 acres outside of town there that. I've got horses and roping steers, and we got hay.
You've got an arena there?
I got an arena, got a lighting arena there, and a barn, and my house.
Now you have some events there at your place, I understand, roping events.
We have a couple. Bill Robinson, the guy I talked about earlier that passed away, we started the Bill Robinson Memorial Scholarship Fund roping, and we've been doing it. This will be our 27th year that we've done it, and the money goes for scholarships for college rodeo, which... That's one thing I wish Oklahoma State would get off their dead butts and do something about, because they've got they got no rodeo program here. It's other schools, because I've talked to them, and you may not even want this on there.
Go right ahead.
But I talked to other schools, like Stephenville, and I said, how do y'all give scholarships? Because I was asking Oklahoma State, why don't you give a scholarship? Well, we can't under NCAA rules and stuff. I said, well, how do these other schools do it then? You know, I mean, if we can't, A&M does it. Texas A&M does it. Lincoln, Nebraska does it. Nebraska University does it. How do they do it if we can't? And I don't get a straight answer. So, but why wouldn't Oklahoma State Cowboys have a rodeo team and a good one? I mean, because when I rodeoed up here, we had a team, but we funded our own stuff. You know, the school didn't help us a bit. I mean, if you went to a rodeo, you paid your own way there, and you paid your own motel bill, you paid your own entry fees, and what you won, you got to keep. But and they never had a coach. Most of these other schools have rodeo coaches, you know, just like football coaches. And we just practiced. I mean, like I said, Rusty and I had a little arena outside of town here where people would come out there and practice. But there's not any, they don't have a coach. They don't have. I think. Well, when I was here, they would take one of the agriculture instructors, and once a month we'd have a meeting, and so a different guy was there every time just to kind of oversee the meeting, which, you know, they didn't have anything to do with. So I don't know. It still puzzles me.
They've got the equestrian team, I guess.
Equestrian team is great. And, you know, and that's what I asked Barnes. I said, Barnes, let me see here. Y'all don't want to do anything about rodeo. Let's see, the last team to win a national title for Oklahoma State was, let me get, the girls rodeo team. Isn't that amazing? You know? And the equestrian team is great. And I think they help the equestrian team, but they don't help the rodeo team. So, anyway, I don't know. I'm done. I'll get off my soapbox here.
No, you still participating competitively? You're doing roping?
Did team roping.
Team roping.
You don't have to get off your horse.
Which one are you in the team?
I head.
Okay.
I heel some, but I head better. So, and that's, we've got that roping coming up at the house. The last of September. That we do it every year. The last September. So.
Is that your memorial
Yeah.
that you do for Bill?
Raise money for scholarships. Yeah.
That's great. Well, you're special to Oklahoma State University. You truly are, and a lot of our alumni still remember you, and you're appreciated for the things you did at Oklahoma State, and the things you've done since. And I just want to sort of leave you with this question. It's a serious question, Walt. How do you hope people remember Walt Garrison?
That's a good question, Gill. I think I would like to be remembered not as a football player. You know, maybe as a guy that played football, but not as a football player. I would hope that I would be remembered as a good friend to my friends, a good friend to Oklahoma State, of course, because I always will be. But I think I would like to be remembered as a fair and honest individual that believed in doing the right thing at the right time.
Walt covered a lot of things, and your stomach's probably ground, but have we left anything out, seriously, anything you'd like to talk about or mention that we hadn't brought up about OSU or anything? It's an opportunity to kind of think of someone 20 years now, 50 years now, be a chance to hear you on this recording.
No, because we talked about, Gill, if we didn't cover it and all that shit, we're not going to cover it now.
All right.
No, I appreciate Oklahoma State. I really do. And I meant what I said. I wasn't trying to sound gallant or anything, but everything that I have, I owe to Oklahoma State because that's where it all started, is right here.